Why were they keeping you?
Oh, I became their toy.
So you just go back to your parents. They didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was going to ask you that as a question anyway. I mean, what did you start to tell them immediately what had happened?
I was on the process. I'm like, but mom and dad, because they were like, oh, why are you here? What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. They were like literally like panicking. My mom is like, I'm like, what's going on? I know they were underground hiding because there was bombing and all sorts happening. I said, Mom and Dad, I have so much to tell you. You don't know what's happened to me in Kosovo. And they're like, what? And we didn't really have time. I didn't have time to tell them anything. And we heard a van, like a truck, army truck, pull into our garden. We have a huge garden back home. And my mom's like, oh my God, they are here. I'm like, Mom, it's fine. Who's here? I'm thinking, who? Like, the soldiers, so what? I was ready. Like, Matt, what I witnessed in Kosovo, I was ready to die. I didn't care anymore. I was with my parents. Whatever happens, happens. And they came and they dragged me from my parents. They said she's come back in Serbia. And my dad is like, please forgive her, just leave her. And I'm like, what? Forgive me? What? Like, I'm thinking, what have I done? Oh, yes, I've crossed borders. But surely once I tell them the story, I said, Mom and Dad in Serbian, don't worry. Once I tell them my story, what happened to me in Kosovo, they will release me because, I was naive, still naive. I mean, you don't grow up overnight. So put me in the van, and I was still so grateful that my parents saw me being taken away by the soldiers. And it's very valuable information to mention that during the war in Yugoslavia, Serbia, the armies that were formed, so it was the regular army, and there was numbers kind of games army. So the Serbian government recruited prisoners of war, killers, robbers, you name it, to make the numbers to fight with Kosovo and just to fight generally. And so they needed to know the difference between the real soldiers and the ones that were not real soldiers for their own sake. So the soldiers that you'd imagine that wear boots and normal uniform, and the ones that were recruited with uniform, but on the shoe side, they didn't wear boots, they wore trainers, white trainers. And it was really weird to see the soldiers dressed up in uniform and then white trainers. Those were the same soldiers that took our town to be massacred, and the same soldiers that took me in. I mean, not maybe the same people, but the same kind of line of soldiers that took me from my parents. And on the actual truck, I'm thinking it's fine. Mom and Dad, they saw me this time, so surely I'll get asked some questions and I'll come back. And
this is literally on the day you've arrived home.
literally minutes of arriving, because the borders were being watched and the town was being shot at. And so I just went through all of this just to get to my mom and dad's house. So we reached this abandoned building in the mountains, not far from my parents, actually. We didn't drive very long, and I know roughly where that is. And they put me into this building. I was thinking, gosh, this is not the actual army base, but okay. And into this room, bright lights, really bright lights, and there was a soldier there waiting for me. And these other two soldiers brought me in. They interrogated me, so they were asking me, tell us where you've been, what you've done, did you spy, are you telling them about what we're doing here? And I told them this is all in Serbia. And I said, I have just escaped because you guys were about to massacre us. So I'm just repeating the story. And then I told them what happened in Kosovo. They're like, no, you're lying. Who are you spying for? And they would hit me, and they punched me and hit me. I lost a couple of teeth. They broke my nose, ripped my ear. They did so many things to me physically. And then the last thing I remember before they locked me up from that interrogation room, by that point I was already bleeding. I'd lost teeth, which are still missing. And my nose had been broken. My eyes were so swollen I couldn't see from being punched on the face. My ear was bleeding, and this ear had gone all, like I couldn't hear. And they said, the guy said, the main soldier, he said, okay, hold her down. let's see, now she will tell the truth. And they pulled out this the cattle branding thing for the cattles, and it was a hashtag shape, like we know a hashtag now. And I could just barely make out, but I couldn't see, but I could feel the heat as is about to go on my calf, at the back of my calf. And when I got the direct contact with the heat, I passed out. I just,
Oh, they did touch. They did
yeah,
touch.
I had a huge scar. I had it laser removed in the UK when I started working. Sorry, my eyes, since I've been crying. When I started working and earning money, I had a lot of things fixed because I was unrecognizable. I mean, I didn't look right. I was really broken. But yeah, that was one of the things that I fixed, the scar on my calf, because I wanted to be able not to remind myself of everything. I remind myself now anyway, but scars and things like that do remind you a lot.
Where were your parents at this point, by the way? Did they get taken as well?
No, they got left
They were
behind.
still at home.
Yeah, still at home. And so yeah, I fainted. I blacked out. And the next memories of that period was me, I don't know how long it had been since I blacked out, waking up, couldn't really see because my eyes were so closed and swollen. I couldn't see anyway, but I was feeling with my hands to see where I was, and it felt really cold and concretey, with only something that seemed like a blanket that I was lying on. It smelled so bad. It smelled so rotten, and it's like really weird. Plus my blood, plus I couldn't smell properly. But can you imagine, because my nose had been broken, but can you imagine, even through my broken nose, I could tell this place was so bad to be in. So I started panicking. I got slowly up. My car was throbbing, started banging at the door, and I realized that the space is really small. So if you were to sit at the corner of it, you could just touch the walls, and then not far away, like this sort of space here, maybe a bit tiny, smaller, maybe this actually. It's that was it. That was my space, a bit narrower than this, and I could barely just lie down and stand up. I could feel it. There was no windows, because as my swelling went down, I realized, and I'm skipping through the story, but there was no windows. I could just see the crack on the door. The door was metal, like pure metal, and didn't have any window or anything, just the crack on the door. And initial reaction, it was claustrophobia and freaking out where I was. I thought I would been buried alive. Then I calmed down. Then I started becoming really crazy, like hitting the wall, screaming, asking to be let out. And after so many screaming and shouting, I exhausted myself. And plus I was so injured. I kept drifting in and out of this, I don't know where was it, just sleep or whatever was happening. But it really, this period turned from that one day of me knowing that I was completely locked up to a 6 months of solitary confinement by these soldiers. And
where was it? It was in a location still near to where your home was.
It's quite near, yeah. Yeah, it was an abandoned building where they use for this kind of stuff, I guess. And my time in that small dark place, goodness me, it was like it's almost like I had gone to learn lessons for the lifetime.
Why were they keeping you?
Oh, I became their toy.
So
they were.
There was no thought of spying or anything more at this point. This was just pure vicious vindictive.
They just turned me into a toy. So then, after my first encounter with them with rape, that was really quite. I didn't expect it, and I didn't know what I was expecting, but that was heartbreaking. And it didn't matter to me anymore. My whole innocent and everything moral was stripped away. And it was just, I starved myself. I didn't want to drink, and I just wanted to die because I didn't see where it was going. 6 months in a solitary confinement, with no interaction with human beings outside of these walls and those soldiers.
How many of these soldiers were there?
Rapes mostly happened 3 at a time. They were changing. There was different ones.
Are there any other girls there as well?
No girls, just them. And this is the problem. What happened during the war? They recruited prisoners of war to serve the army.